Hello, welcome to VBA tutorialcode.com. In this video I'll show you how to use do until loop formulas and for loop formulas. They're kind of the same concept, and then I'll just go into advanced looping and loop formulas in VBA later on in this video at about like 5 minutes. I'm just going to take the first 5 minutes just to show you a very simple loop formula. Also show you how to enable VBA in Excel. If you've never used Excel before, this will be from start to finish. You'll be able to copy exactly what I'm doing on screen. I recommend that you follow along if you are new to VBA, and if you want to learn these concepts yourself. You'll learn a new lesson here in 10 minutes. It'll be very easy to follow along because I know how to start it from start to finish. So if you're in Excel 2013, just go to File, Options, and under Customize Ribbon, you just have to click the Developer tab, and that will add the Developer tab in the ribbon up here in Excel. And if you want to access the Project Explorer, you just press View Code here, or you can press Alt F11. It brings up the same exact screen. Alternatively, in Excel 2007, 2010, you just press File, and then you go to Options, and then Popular, and you just click Show Developer tab in the ribbon, and then I'll have the same exact result, same exact end result as what we just did in Excel 2013, in case you have a different version of Excel and you're trying to follow along in Excel 2007 as opposed to Excel 2013. Alright, so you see this workbook here. It says a VBA project book 2. We're currently looking at book 2. We opened up the Developer Project Explorer from book 2. I'm just going to close it and open it again. And yeah, so if you just click Insert Module, we just created a module within book 2. A module is a block of code that executes in a logical order from top to bottom. And this code, it could do whatever you tell it to do, and it applies to this workbook. You could have modules within other workbooks that cause other modules to execute from top to bottom. They'll just link, and you could link kind of code together within different workbooks in case your modules, once you get past like 10,000 lines, they run out of the ability to execute anymore. So you could just link different modules from different workbooks together, and there'll be never-ending loop of modules and code that you could possibly do. There's no limit to the amount of code you can execute as long as you link everything together, and there's literally a smooth transition regardless of. Alright, so I'm just going to go into a simple do formula, but every single sub procedure, it starts with sub and then the module name, open brackets, and they always end with end sub. So I'm just going to declare a variable here, and I'm just going to call it variable 1 as integer, and I'm just going to set that variable 1 equal to 1, and I'm just going to declare another variable, and it's just going to be zebra as integer. It's kind of the same thing, exactly what I just did before, except I'm just going to make zebra equal to 1,000, so you could kind of see the difference between these two variables. If you want it, honestly, you could name a variable whatever you want, as long as it's not a formula that exists in Excel or in VBA, and that name is already taken by a different concept or a different object or whatever. So you could use basically any word. You could even say like dim yo-yo as string. There are different types of data types. You could just declare it as whatever. Yeah, so I'll go into more data types in a different video. That's a different concept than right now. I feel like I just want to focus on do loop formulas. So I'm just going to write a quick do until variable 1 equals 5, and I'm just going to end the loop. So every single loop formula, it starts with the words do until, and then it ends with loop. So it's just going to do until this variable 1, which we set equal to 1 up here. We're going to do that until that equals 5. And how exactly do we get that to end up equaling 5 and exiting the loop? Because the loop formulas, they will start up here and then they'll end down here, and then it'll loop back up to the top and it'll say, now whatever is happening, if this is true, if variable 1 does actually equal 5, it'll exit the loop and it'll go over here, and then it's done actually executing that loop. And so right now I'm just going to do a quick range formula, which is, it allows you to reference basically the cells within Excel. So I'm going to set range A1 dot value equal to 1. I'm just going to do this up here. I'm going to take this out of the loop because if you've never executed VBA code before, it executes from top to bottom. I'm just going to step through the code by pressing F8 here on my keyboard. So F8 is going to make range A1 right now. You see it's at the line. I'm going to press F8 again. It's going to make range A1 equal to 1, because the VBA code, once it gets past that line, that's actually when that line executed, and it makes whatever you just wrote in happen. I'm just going to press stop up here. That stops the VBA code from executing, and I'm just going to start again in case you are unsure of how range formulas work. I'm just going to make range B1 equal to 1 now, and you kind of get the idea. I'm going to make range C1 equal to 1, range D1 equal to 100. In case you're unsure of range formulas, I feel like I'll explain that a little bit before actually going into this loop. But so I'm just going to make a range A and variable 1 dot value equal to 1000, and I'm just going to add variable 1 to itself, so that it actually, instead of variable 1 equaling 1, it'll be, say if variable 1 equals 1 when it hits this line, it'll be 1 plus 1, so now variable 1 equals 2, because whatever is on the right hand side of this equation is what the placeholder, the variable, will equal after it executes. So I'm just going to press F8 here, and you could kind of see how a loop formula works now. So you can see variable 1 currently equals 0 because it's at the line at which variable 1 equals 1. On the next line, variable 1 equals 1. If you highlight it, you can see whatever the value of the variable is at that point of time in the code. Variables can change in value. They are kind of like algebra. They are like the x, solving for x. The value changes based on wherever you are in the code and whatever is happening to the variable. I like variables because they aren't a set constant number. They have the ability to change based on logic and based on code. So you can modify them however you want, and based on how the number changes, your code progresses. So right now you can see a zebra. It doesn't in fact equal 1000 because it's at that line at which zebra equals 1000. So if I press F8 one more time, zebra actually equals 1000 because it's past that line. We're stepping through the code by pressing F8. So do until variable equals 5. Currently variable 1 equals 1. And alright, so now we're at the range formula. Remember the range formulas we were just looking at? Now it's range A, and instead of range A1, B1, C1, D1, it's range A, and it's concatenating. So there's an ampersand here, and then it's range A and variable 1. So this is basically the same thing as saying range A1. So it could be range A and say it could be range B and variable 1, it'll be range B1. It's kind of the same exact thing we were doing up there, except now you can you can see how it'll change. Like instead of just being stuck with range A1 equals 1, which is just a single cell, now it can loop through range A1 to A10, and you'll see how that works right now. So range A1 equals 1,000. So right here, variable 1 equals 1, and then variable 1, it'll equal whatever it is plus 1, so it'll add 1 to itself. So now variable 1 actually equals 2, so it's kind of like adding 1 to 1. So right now, the loop formula just starts again at the top of the loop formula, and right now variable 1 equals 2 now instead of 1. And it'll just keep going and executing through this loop until variable 1 actually equals 5, at which point it'll exit the loop and it'll be at the next stage in the code. So do until variable 1 equals 5. Yeah, so now you can see variable 1 is actually equal to 3. So make range A3 equal to 1,000. Range 4 equal to 1,000. And you can see now variable 1 equals 5. So it's actually going to exit the loop at the next step. And it doesn't make range A5 equal to 1,000 because it actually equals 5. And it's done with the loop. So I'm just going to go over here and just kind of show you in column B how this loop would look, and I'm just going to do it until it's greater than 5. So it's going to execute up until variable 1 is greater than 5, or variable 1 actually equals 6 in this situation. So it's kind of the same thing. Now variable 1 equals 1 again because the code is executing again, and variable 1 equals 1 up here logically. So range B and 1 equals 1,000. B2 equals 1,000. Right here, B3 equals 1,000. B4 equals 1,000. B5 equals 1,000. You can see now variable 1, 6 is greater than 5. That is very true, so it's going to exit the loop. I'm going to show you how to do a quick for formula, which is the exact same thing as a loop formula. But if you can't remember do, until, and loop, if you want to just remember this one, because I guess you got to go by memory when you're first starting out. So let's just say for variable 1 equals 1 to 10, and then you're just going to do next variable 1, and yeah, I'll kind of show you how the for formula works. It's basically the same exact thing as the loop formula. So right here, you're just going to execute again. Variable 1 equals 1 again because you're at the top again. So you're going to do from when variable 1 equals 1 to it equals 10. So it's going to make range B and 1 equal to 1,000. And then the next variable, it actually, you can see variable 1 equals 1 here. But once it goes past this, it's going to add 1 to variable. So it's kind of like adding 1 to itself right here with the next variable. And it's kind of like variable 1 equals variable 1 plus 1, except it's just next. And next, and next. And it'll just go from 1 till 10. That'll be when it stops executing. You can see it went from 1 to 10. It went from range B1 to range B10. And it just made all those values 1,000. And now I'm kind of going to go into more advanced looping, just so you could see how this concept is actually useful. Because how is it actually useful? Like, why don't I just press 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1? Like, why am I wasting my time writing VBA code to fill in values wherever? How is that actually useful? And I'm just going to show you that right here in this new workbook. So this new workbook, what it actually does is we're going to be checking column N, and we're going to be checking column N versus column A. Let's just say column N is today's data set, and column A is yesterday's data set. And here are the names for today in column N, and here are the names yesterday in column A. And we want to see what are the new names in today's data set, column N, versus the name in yesterday's data set, column A. And this is what we're going to do with this code. So say you get like a set of company names, or a set of like products that you sold that day, and you just want to see what's selling today versus what's selling yesterday. That's what you could do with these loop formulas and all these other stuff that I'm going to show you. Yeah, so here is a different module for the VBA project. This Excel workbook is called Loops, Filters, Visible, NA, whatever. That's what the workbook is called over here in the Project Explorer. And here's the module 1 that I wrote for over here, and it's just called module. And you can see here's the end sub at the bottom. So right here, it does a dim n row. That's just a variable right here. That's the same thing as variable 1 as integer. And I'm just going to step through this code. You know how like we stepped through the code by pressing F8 before? You can also just click over here and set a stop point or a breaking point, and then you just press play, and it'll actually execute up until it reaches that breakpoint. And that's if you want to like skip over something that you already know, and you just want to get to a different starting point in your code while you're debugging, and then from that point, you could actually just press F8 and step through the code, so you don't have to actually step through all like 10,000 lines of code. You could just start at line 5,000. But yeah, I'm just gonna step through this code real quick. And so dim n row right now equals 0, doesn't equal anything up until it gets to the next line. So n row is gonna equal whatever the last, this formula right here, it makes n row equal to the last row in column n. The last row in column n is 7, so n row is actually going to equal 7. You can see n row equals 7. So say I'm just going to stop executing this code and just go to range n a for that, and you can see how the value of n row changes. Now n row is actually 6 because the last row in column A is 6. That's what this formula does right here. It does whatever the last row is in whatever column you specify. It's a very useful formula. I use this in the majority of my VBA code, and it's useful in case you want to fill down a formula from top to bottom of a certain data column, and you want it to stop exactly at the end of the column. It's very useful. I've used it thousands of times. So right now I just switched it back to n, so it's 7. That's the last row in column n. Rows are the horizontal columns, I guess, in Excel, 1 through 63,356, or whatever that number is. That's how many rows there are. And the columns are column A all the way to ZZ. You can see how the columns go left to right, blah, blah, blah. Those are columns. Yeah, so right here, it's going to it's going to select range H2. See how right now we have H3 selected? Right now it's going to select range H2. And it's going to set this formula equal to VLOOKUP RC6. And this value is actually the value that it's in R1C1 format. So you can't really see it. And then it's going to return the value from column 1 instead of 2 or column 3, and it's going to be an exact match. If you're unsure how to use VLOOKUP formulas, just watch my VLOOKUP formula video. I'll go into more detail in that video if you're unsure of how VLOOKUP formulas work. But you see this VLOOKUP formula that I put here? It actually is in R1C1 format, which I can also go into my R1C1 video. It's this kind of reference style. So I'm just going to stop executing this code for a second just to show you basic what R1C1 is. So say you want to concatenate that. Concatenate that and that. So this is a basic concatenation formula in R1C1 format. So what it's going to do is it's going to concatenate or it's just gonna like merge together the values in RC minus 7. Here's RC minus 7, and then here's RC 6. It's negative if it's to the left, if it's positive it's to the right. And so it creates Jeff Bob. And let's just like drag it down a little bit, or it creates Stacy Frank. But yeah, so if you're unsure of like R1C1 format, just go to File, Options, and then Formulas, and just uncheck R1C1. And now it's just concatenating range A2 and N2, or A3 and N3. I always switch to R1C1 formula while doing formulas in VBA, because it's a lot easier, and you have to deal with like A1, A2, A3, and all that other stuff, and have to deal with like the variables to change the numbers associated with it. I like to use R1C1 format. I'll go into more explanation why in a different video. But yeah, so I'm just executing the VBA code again, and it's gonna make range H2, and what it's doing is it's gonna look up VLOOKUP Bob versus column A. Is Bob actually in column A? And it's gonna return what the value is in column 1 if it actually equals Bob, and it has to be an exact match. It has to exactly equal Bob, or else it's not gonna actually show. So Bob isn't in column A. Column N, let's just say, is today's data set, and column A is yesterday's data set. Bob wasn't there yesterday, and he's there today. So yeah, and I'm just gonna fill down here, and so it's looking up Frank. Is Frank there yesterday? No. Was extra name there yesterday? No. Was Scott there? Is Scott in column A? It's like, yes, Scott was in column A, and he's in column N, so it's a match. Jeff is in column A and column N, so it's a match. Cleveland was in column A, and he's in column N, so it's a match. So yeah, we just did like a formula. Like, it fills down the VLOOKUP formula from H2. Let me just delete that, and I'll just start executing it again. So right here, it just adds the formula that we wanted at H2. Here's H2, and it's going to select H2, and it's just going to autofill this formula from H2 to H and end row. End row is whatever we set it up to be up here, which is 7, so it's going to fill from H2 to H7, and it's going to look up all these names in N versus A. And right here, what it's doing is it's going to select and copy range column H, because you see, like, we have a formula in here. Like, we don't want a formula in here anymore. We just want the values, because you can't like work with and modify formulas, because it's actually not the value itself that we want to work with. Like, the value itself, we don't want to be working with the formula while going into these next steps. So I'm just going to copy. Oh wait, let me just start that over. I'll just skip all the way over to here, so we're at the same spot again. All right, so it's going to select column H, columns H select, and it's going to selection copy and column H select, and it's just going to paste the values. This is a way of pasting, and it's kind of like when you paste special and you select values in Excel, except this is how it's done in VBA. This is where it starts and where it finishes. So instead of being formulas here, now it's just the actual values themselves, so we could work with the values, because we can't modify formulas. We can modify the values that we are working with. So here's column HH. It's going to select, and what it's going to do is going to replace any NAs within this selection, and it's going to replace them with new name. So now here are all the new names. Bob's a new name, Frank's a new name, extra name is a new name. All right, so now it's gonna declare a counter variable, and it's gonna be the last row in column H, and it's going to do until. Now I'm just going to show you another do until formula. It's just going to loop, and it's just going to tell you each of the new names. Box name holder equals n. All right. So right now we're at this loop formula, do until loop, and counter equals 2. It's just going to start at 2. Because we don't want to deal with the first row or the first cell in column H. We just want to look at H2. And this other variable that we declared, name holder, we declared up here, the name holder a string. And name holder, the string data type is it kind of like works with letters instead of with numbers. Like integers is like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Strings are text. So if you want to set a variable equal to a certain text field or a text cell value in Excel, that's what a string is. So you go into do until counter equals end row. End row is 8 because it's the last row in column H plus 1. We added 1 to it. End row equals end row plus 1. So name holder equals range n and counter. So name holder equals range n 2.value. So right now name holder equals Bob because we're doing do until counter equals end row, and the name holder is Bob. Name holder equals range n n2. So whatever n2 is, that's what it's going to equal. So it equals Bob. So if range h and counter equals new name, then so if the value here equals new name, then what it's going to do is a message box, and it's going to just say message box, and it's going to have whatever we have holding the name holder. So Bob is a new name, and being that this is true, the if statement was true, it actually executes whatever's in here. So it's just going to say Bob is a new name in the message box. That was just the message box that just popped up. And it's just going to add counter. So counter started at 2. Counter 2 equals 2 plus 1. So now counter equals 3. Just going to start at the beginning of this loop formula again. And now counter equals 3. It's just going to go all the way until 8 because that's the one after the last row in H as we set up there. So now counter equals 3. Name holder equals range n and 3.value. So now name holder equals Frank. And it's just holding that name. And so if range h and counter equals new name, then it's just gonna, so yeah, that's true. Does h3 equal new name? Yes, it does, as you can see right here. And being that that's true, it's gonna output whatever the message box is here. As you can see, the name holder is now Frank instead of Bob, because that's what we set it equal to up here based on this value here. And so it's just gonna, being that this if statement was true, h3 did equal new name, it's just gonna say message box whatever the name holder is. So Frank is a new name, and if, and now counter is gonna equal 4. So name holder equals n4. So now name holder equals Scott. And if range h and counter equals new name, that's not true. It doesn't equal new name. H and counter, h4, actually equals Scott now, and it doesn't equal name. So being that it doesn't equal that, it's going to skip to the end of the if formula because it's not true. Scott isn't a new name. Scott was in column A and it's in column N. So it's going to skip to the end of it. We're not going to get a message box saying Scott is a new name because Scott isn't a new name. And yeah, now counter equals 5. And so it's just going to set name holder equal to Jeff. And being that h5 doesn't equal new name, it equals Jeff, it's just going to skip past it. And here's do until counter equals, so the name holder now is Cleveland. And Cleveland, so here's the if formula. If counter, if h6 equals new name, and h6 doesn't equal new name, it equals Cleveland. So it's just going to skip right past that if formula, and we're not going to get a message box again. And now counter equals 7. So here we go right here. This so name holder equals n7. So now name holder is equal to extra name, and if range h and counter equals new name, h7 does equal new name, counter equals 7, equals new name, and message box extra name is a new name. And it's going to do counter equals counter plus 1. All right. So now what it's doing is it's going to filter everything in column H, active sheet range, auto filter. It's kind of like filtering Excel, except it's in VBA. And it's going to filter everything. It's going to filter everything by whatever is equal to new name. So you can see that right here. It just filtered everything in column H that equals new name. And let's just do N to N. All right. So as you can see, we just filtered everything with that filter formula. And now it's going to select everything in range N2 to N2000. That's it'll select everything from N2 to N2000 over here. And it's just going to select and special cell select the visible cells. So it's only selecting cells that are visible on the worksheet because as you can see, row 4, row 5, row 6 are all not visible anymore because they're not filtered. We filtered by new name. So we only want the new names here, Bob, Frank, and extra name. We don't want all those other names that weren't new names that were in column A and column N because they aren't new and we don't care about them. So it's just going to select those visible names and it's going to copy them. And this formula here, it's just going to add new sheet in Excel. So it's going to add the sheet after the current sheet. So sheets.add after, and here's the current sheet down here, sheet 1. This is sheet 1 for the workbook, loops, filters, visible, NA. So we're just going to add a new sheet. As you can see, here's sheet 2. So what this does is sheets 2 select. It's selecting within the index of the sheets. If I had 1 here, it would just select sheet 1, but it has sheet 2, so sheet 2 select. So it's just going to select range A2. And it's going to paste what we just copied up here with the visible copy, and it just pastes it. So here's all the new names here, Bob, Frank, extra name. And now range A1 equals whatever we just typed next to it. So range A1 equals new names column. And column A dot select. And you see how like the column kind of looks like shit. It doesn't have like a good like width. So the auto fit, it'll just auto fit that column, and now it doesn't look like shit, as you can see. Like column A is as big as the biggest width within that column. And you see sheets, sheet 1 dot select. Here's another way to select sheets. It'll just select sheet 1. If I had just written, instead of sheet 1, if I had just written 1, that would have the same exact effect as what we just did. And active sheet.show all data, it's just going to show all the data, and it's going to remove this filter that we had on new name. And that's the end of that thing right here. So basically what we did from start to finish is we looked at column N and all these names, and we looked at that versus column A. So we got all the new names that are in column N that aren't in column A. So is Bob in here in column A? No. That's a new name. Was Frank in column A? No, that's a new name. Was Scott here in column A? Yes. So that shouldn't be on sheet 2. Was Jeff over here? Yes. So that shouldn't be on sheet 2. Was Cleveland over here in column A? Yes. So that should be on sheet 2. Was extra name over here in column A? No. So that should be on sheet 2. So it's Bob, Frank, and extra name that are on sheet 2 now. Bob, Frank, extra name. I'm 100% right. I'm the best. So I'm just going to delete sheet 2. And I'm just going to execute this code again, just so you can see how actually fast this code actually goes through when you actually just press play. And this is how it would be for someone who was just working with the program and they didn't have to write the program. See, you put that all together, it'll do a logical task. It'll take all the new names that are in column N that weren't in column A. You put this entire thing together, it'll run any day you run it, and it works forever, and it'll never not work. And you just press play, I'll say Bob is a new name, Frank is a new name, extra name is a new name. And yeah, it has all the new names over here. And it just removed the filter. And yeah, so that's how it looks like for people who aren't executing the code. And let's just add like an extra like sheet 2 dot select down here. So notice how it's like sheet 3. I'm just gonna go to like sheet 4 now. Yeah, so press play. Bob is a new name, Frank is a new name, extra name is a new name, and it just puts everything into sheet 4. And this is how it look. Here's all the new names for all that person, and yeah, that's basically how do loop formulas work. Thank you for watching my video. I'm gonna make a few more videos that I recommend you watch in relation to this video, such as select case. Select case is a complicated if statement for the most part. I recommend you watch my R1C1 video for formulas if you want to work more with Excel formulas in Excel. And let's see, I recommend you watch my linking modules. Like I'll loop through multiple worksheets, workbooks, file paths if you want to get really complicated and kind of see how looping works on a more advanced level. Thank you for watching. VBAtutorialcode.com. Check out my website for more tips. If you have any questions or anything, you could send me a question on there and I'll answer you.